The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint hum of hospital machines. James sat motionless in a sterile waiting room, the smell of disinfectant sharp in the air. His hands trembled as he clutched a worn photograph of his daughter, her smile frozen in happier times. The nurse walked past without meeting his eyes, her hurried steps echoing the weight of unspoken truths. James whispered, "Why did it come to this? Why can't I be there when she needs me?" His voice cracked, the words carried on a breath too fragile to hold steady. The divorce papers, once just paper, now felt like shackles binding him to absence. He remembered Sarah's bitter words, "You've lost the right to be her father." Each syllable had cut him deeper than any blade. His chest ached, not with illness, but with the unbearable realization that childhood slips away faster than regret. Tonight was proof. He had already missed too much, and there was no way back. The clock ticked louder than his heartbeat, each second mocking the hours he had lost. James stared at the sterile wall, his mind drifting back to the last time he held Emily's hand. Her tiny fingers curled around his thumb, her laugh spilling like music into the air. "Daddy, don't let go," she had said, her eyes wide with trust. Yet here he was, empty-handed, her voice only an echo haunting the edges of his memory. The waiting room's silence was merciless, pressing against him until he felt crushed beneath its weight. He wanted to scream, to shatter the glass walls that kept him apart from her world. But instead he whispered into the emptiness, "I'm sorry, baby, I tried." His voice broke, jagged like glass. The photograph trembled in his lap, as if alive with her absence. He was a father in name, but not in presence, bound to a love he could no longer hold. Rain tapped relentlessly against the window, a rhythm that seemed to count every missed moment. James remembered Emily's birthday party, the candles glowing, her wish whispered with hope he couldn't hear. He had promised to be there, but court orders had silenced that vow. "Why does love have to feel like punishment?" he muttered, the words jagged as they left his lips. The photograph stared back at him, her smile untouched by the storm of reality. His chest tightened with a grief that was both familiar and unending. He clenched the picture tighter, knuckles white, fighting the fear that Emily might grow older, without remembering the sound of his voice. His world shrank to this waiting room, this chair, and the unbearable truth that love from a distance feels like a wound that never heals. The sterile white walls were relentless, reflecting his despair back at him. James closed his eyes, but the silence was louder there, filled with memories of Emily's laughter. He remembered her running into his arms, her hair catching sunlight, her voice calling, "Daddy." The warmth of that moment contrasted violently with the chill of this night. He whispered, "I can still feel you here," pressing the photo to his chest as though it could beat like a heart. Guilt clawed at him. He wasn't there when she cried, when she stumbled, when she looked for him in the crowd. Each absence carved a scar deeper than the last. He pressed his face into his hands, the weight of every failure crushing him. Time slipped away, but love held him prisoner, binding him in memories too sweet to let go and too painful to keep. A faint announcement over the intercom jolted James from his thoughts, the words indistinct but heavy with dread. His heart pounded as though bracing for news he couldn't bear. He glanced at the doors beyond, each one a barrier between him and Emily's world. "Please, just let me see her," he begged under his breath, desperation raw. The chair groaned as he pushed himself upright, his legs trembling. His eyes burned with sleepless nights, every line etched deeper by regret. The world outside carried on, oblivious to the storm raging inside him. He felt like a ghost, existing but unseen, his love invisible yet fierce. His voice cracked as he whispered again, "I'll never stop fighting for you, Emily." In that promise, fragile yet defiant, lived the only piece of himself not yet broken. James woke in the half-light of morning, his small apartment silent except for the groan of pipes. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and forgotten dinners. His phone lit up with a message, not from Emily, but from Sarah, reminding him of overdue payments. Each word felt like a knife, cutting deeper into his weary chest. He whispered, "I'm not a bad father. I'm just locked out." His voice shook, but the walls did not answer. He reached for the photo again, the only anchor keeping him from drifting into despair. He imagined Emily's laughter filling the empty space, her feet running across the floorboards. Yet silence swallowed him whole. He tried to picture her growing older, and the fear gnawed at him. Would she still know his face when years passed? He pressed his hand over his eyes, fighting the tears, praying for one chance to hold her again. The sound of children playing drifted in through the window, each laugh a cruel reminder of what he was missing. James leaned against the glass, forehead pressed cold to the pane. He remembered Emily's voice, bright and full of wonder, saying, "Daddy, push me higher." The memory replayed in his mind, vivid as yesterday, but out of reach. His chest tightened with longing that bordered on pain. He muttered, "How do I father from a distance? How do I protect her when I can't even be there?" The world outside was alive with laughter, but his apartment echoed with absence. He closed his eyes, listening, imagining her among them, her smile aimed at someone else. He clenched his fist, not in anger, but in desperate need to feel something other than this hollow ache that grew stronger with every sound of joy not meant for him. The table was set with a single plate, but James left it untouched. His appetite had withered with the distance between him and Emily. The silence of the room mocked him as he stared at the chair across, imagining her swinging her legs while waiting for pancakes. He whispered, "I should be making you breakfast right now." The ache in his chest deepened as the smell of burned toast filled the air from the neglected pan. He pulled it from the stove, cursing under his breath, but the frustration melted into sadness. He placed the plate on the table anyway, as if leaving a space for her could somehow fill the void. The chair remained empty, but in his heart, he pictured her laughter echoing, filling the gaps of silence with warmth that only existed in memory. James sat on the floor, surrounded by unopened boxes from his old home, remnants of a life once whole. He pulled out Emily's stuffed rabbit, its fur worn soft, and cradled it gently. "She used to carry you everywhere," he whispered, his voice breaking. The memory of her running through the park, clutching the rabbit, hit him like a wave, knocking the breath from his lungs. His eyes burned as he pressed the toy to his chest, desperate to bridge the distance with something tangible. The walls closed in, crowded not with people, but with fragments of a family that no longer existed. He whispered again, "I didn't leave you. I never left you." Yet the hollow space around him argued otherwise, echoing his words back like ghosts, reminding him of promises broken. Evening settled in, painting the room in amber light. James stood by the window, staring at the fading sky. He remembered Emily's first word, the way her lips curled, the sound fragile yet certain. "Daddy." That memory returned with piercing clarity, stabbing through the haze of loneliness. His breath caught and he whispered, "That was the happiest sound I've ever known." The city outside buzzed with life, headlights streaking past, but none of it reached him. He pressed the photo of Emily against the glass, aligning her smile with the fading horizon, as though he could project her into the world where he no longer belonged. His eyes closed and he murmured, "No matter how far, my love will find you." The promise lingered in the silence, heavy yet unbreakable, a vow etched deeper than any distance could erase. The rain fell harder that night, streaking the glass with silver lines that blurred the world outside. James sat at his cluttered desk, bills spread before him like accusations he couldn't answer. His hands shook as he opened another envelope, the red letters shouting louder than his thoughts. He whispered, "I can't keep up, not like this." His voice cracked, and he shoved the papers aside. They slid to the floor, scattering across the carpet like pieces of his broken pride. His mind drifted to Emily's field trip photo Sarah had sent last week, her smile radiant, her hand holding another's. Was she looking for me in the crowd? He asked the empty room. His chest tightened with guilt and the suffocating truth. Distance was not just miles, but years of moments slipping through his grasp. The phone buzzed, Sarah's name flashing on the screen. James hesitated before answering, knowing her words would cut deep. Her tone was sharp, reminding him of responsibilities he was failing to meet. "You're never there, James. She's learning to live without you," she snapped. Each word was a blow, stripping him of defenses. He tried to explain, but his voice faltered, collapsing into silence. He whispered, "I never stopped trying." But the line went dead, leaving him crushed beneath the weight of her truth. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the phone, his reflection in the dark screen a stranger staring back at him. For a moment he wondered if Emily would one day believe Sarah's words, that her father had chosen absence over love. The thought hollowed him, emptiness gnawing at the last of his strength. James wandered into Emily's old room, the boxes still stacked in corners, filled with toys and books. The air smelled of dust and forgotten days. He pulled out a pink backpack, her favorite once, and pressed it to his chest. His knees gave way as he collapsed onto the floor, the weight of memory unbearable. He whispered, "I should be the one packing your lunches, tying your shoes, hearing about your day." The silence offered no comfort, only the reminder of what he had lost. He buried his face in the backpack, the faint scent of her still clinging to the fabric, stabbing through his chest. His heart ached with a grief too heavy to carry, yet he clung to it, afraid of what forgetting might mean. The night stretched endlessly, as James sat hunched at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. His mind replayed the last visitation, Emily running toward him, then stopping when Sarah called her back. That hesitation pierced deeper than any words. He whispered, "Does she think I left her? Does she believe I don't care?" The questions tore him apart. He pressed his palms against his temples, the pressure a futile attempt to silence the storm within. Memories battled with reality, each moment of joy shadowed by the distance now imposed. His chest rose in shallow breaths, and he stared at the empty chair across from him. The chair mocked him, its silence filled with Emily's absent voice. His love had nowhere to go but back into himself, ricocheting until it broke him. James stood on the balcony, the city lights stretching endlessly below. The night air was sharp, biting his skin, but he welcomed the sting. He leaned against the railing, staring into the distance, as if Emily might appear in the glow of headlights far away. He whispered, "Every light reminds me of you. Every breath I take is for you." His chest heaved with the effort of holding back tears, his body shaking with the strain of silence. For a fleeting second, he imagined her voice calling his name, imagined turning to see her there. The fantasy collapsed into the empty night, leaving him with nothing but the echo of longing. He gripped the railing tighter, knuckles white, his heart beating with both despair and defiance. "I'll never let you fade from me," he vowed, the city carrying his words into the dark. The mirror was merciless, reflecting a man he no longer recognized. James stared at his hollow eyes, the dark circles carved deep, his jaw set tight with exhaustion. He pressed his palms to the sink, whispering, "You're failing her." The voice in his head answered cruelly, reminding him of every moment missed. His chest tightened, memories twisting into accusations, the birthdays, the first lost tooth, the nights of sickness he wasn't there to comfort. He gripped the edges of the sink until his knuckles whitened, his breath shallow, his heart a drum of panic. He tried to push the thoughts away, but the silence of the apartment fed them, each echo sharper than the last. "You're just a shadow," he muttered, his reflection glaring back, fractured by the crack in the mirror. For the first time, he wondered if Emily would one day see him the same way, broken, distant, a stranger wearing her father's name. James sat in the darkened living room, the stuffed rabbit in his lap. He whispered, "Do you still hold this at night, Emily?" His voice trembled, the silence answering back with cruelty. He closed his eyes, and suddenly her laughter filled the room, but it was only memory, distorted by grief. His hands shook as he pressed the toy tighter, inhaling the faint scent that still clung to it. His mind betrayed him, painting visions of her running away from him. Her back turned, her voice calling someone else Daddy. He clutched his head, muttering, "Stop. Please stop." The memories shifted into nightmares, and he felt trapped inside his own guilt. He was not just fighting Sarah or the distance, but a darker truth. The belief that he had already lost Emily, not to another person, but to the passage of time and his own absence. The rain outside became a storm, pounding against the glass with fury. James stood by the window, forehead pressed to the cold pane, the city lights blurred by water trails. His reflection seemed foreign, a ghost staring back. "You weren't strong enough," he whispered, his breath fogging the glass. Memories bled into each other. The courtroom, Sarah's sharp tone, Emily's confused eyes searching for answers she'd never get. He slammed his fist against the frame, the sound drowned by thunder. His chest burned with the truth he hated most. He wasn't fighting Sarah anymore. He was fighting himself. His fear had become the enemy, the doubt gnawing at him every waking hour. His tears mixed with the rain, his reflection vanishing in the blur, until only a silhouette remained. "She deserves more than me," he muttered, the words poisoning the air as lightning split the sky. The clock struck midnight, and James sat alone at the table, pen and paper before him. His hand hovered, unable to write. He wanted to send Emily a letter, something to remind her of his love, but every word felt weak, unworthy. He scribbled, "Dear Emily," then stopped, the ink blotted by trembling fingers. What if she never reads this? What if she doesn't care? His voice cracked, and the paper crumpled beneath his grip. The silence closed in, louder than ever, as if mocking his attempt to bridge the distance. He dropped the pen, burying his face in his hands. His own doubt, heavier than any court order, kept him paralyzed. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just absent in her life, he was disappearing in his own. The letter lay abandoned, another reminder of the father he wanted to be but couldn't reach. The night finally broke him. James sat against the wall, knees pulled to his chest, the silence pressing like a weight too heavy to bear. His breathing came shallow, each inhale shaky, his heart hammering against ribs. He whispered, "I can't keep doing this." The darkness answered with memories he couldn't escape. Emily's laughter fading, Sarah's words repeating, "You'll never be enough." He pressed his palms against his ears, rocking slightly, trying to drown them out. But the voices grew louder inside, shadows of guilt and fear clawing through him. For a moment, he thought of walking away, disappearing entirely. But then, in the midst of despair, he clutched the photograph from his pocket. Emily's smile stared back, fragile but real, pulling him back from the edge. He whispered, "For you, I'll hold on." And in that fragile promise, he found the strength to endure another night. Morning came gray, the light unforgiving as James opened the mailbox. Among the bills and empty flyers was an envelope from Sarah. His hands trembled as he tore it open. The words inside knocked the breath from his lungs. Custody papers, legal confirmation that his visitation would be reduced further. He whispered, "Nah, she can't do this." His vision blurred, the letters swimming on the page. Each word declared his absence official, sanctioned, carved into law. His knees weakened, and he leaned against the cold metal boxes, the world spinning. The paper slipped from his grasp, floating to the ground like a death sentence. He muttered, "She's erasing me." The sky above stayed gray, indifferent, while the words echoed inside his skull. The truth hit with merciless clarity. Sarah was not just limiting him. She was rewriting Emily's childhood without him in it. He stumbled back into his apartment, papers crumpled in his fist. James threw them onto the table, pacing the room in panic. "She's taking her from me," he whispered, his voice breaking. His chest heaved as he collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. He remembered Sarah's cold stare in court, the finality in her voice when she said, "She doesn't need you anymore." Those words now had legal weight, the echo louder than before. James slammed his fist against the table, the sound sharp in the hollow apartment. "No, Emily, I won't let her erase me," he whispered, voice hoarse with desperation. His eyes darted to the photo on the shelf, her smile burning into him like a lifeline. His love remained his only weapon, fragile but defiant, against the system breaking him piece by piece. James sat on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through old messages from Emily. Her voice notes played softly, her laughter pure and untarnished by conflict. He pressed the phone to his ear, whispering, "This is all I have left." Ah. Tears blurred the screen as he replayed the same clip again and again. Sarah's new restrictions meant fewer calls, fewer moments to hear her voice. Each word Emily once said became more precious, yet more painful, because he didn't know when he'd hear her again. His chest clenched with the realization that love could not fight paper and law. He muttered, "They can take my time, but they can't take my love." Still, the doubt gnawed at him. Would Emily's memories fade faster than his persistence? The silence after her voice stopped felt like a graveyard of promises he could no longer keep. The day blurred into evening as James sifted through old photo albums. His fingers traced Emily's baby pictures, her tiny face glowing with innocence. He whispered, "I was there once. I was the one who held you." The memories cut deeper now, proof that he hadn't always been absent. But Sarah's new move threatened to erase even that, turning him into a ghost in Emily's story. He closed the album abruptly, chest heaving, tears spilling onto the cover. His body shook as he muttered, "I won't disappear, I won't." Yet, beneath the defiance was fear, the suffocating thought that no matter how tightly he held these memories, they would never replace her presence. His love was eternal, but memory alone was fragile, fading against the march of time. The revelation hit hardest at night. James lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the papers still on the table like a curse. He realized Sarah's battle wasn't only legal, it was personal, aimed to erase him completely from Emily's life. His breath caught, fear crawling through him. He whispered, "She'll grow up thinking I didn't fight for her." The thought shattered him. He sat up abruptly, gripping the photo again, Emily's smile steady against his trembling hands. "I'll fight until I can't breathe," he vowed into the darkness. His voice cracked, but the promise felt heavier than law, deeper than fear. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It carried his vow like a beacon into the night. And though doubt clawed at him, love burned stronger, refusing to be silenced. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, its cold stone walls reflecting James' fear back at him. He sat on the wooden bench, clutching the photo of Emily, his heart pounding so loudly he thought others could hear it. He whispered, "For you, I'll face this." Sarah entered, her gaze sharp, lips tight with determination. Their eyes met, and the silence carried years of anger and unspoken blame. James' chest tightened. He wanted to scream, to beg, to break through the wall she had built between him and his daughter. His lawyer's voice was calm, but the words blurred as James stared at the courtroom doors. Every step forward felt like wading through chains, but inside him burned the vow not to let Emily's childhood be stolen. He pressed the photo to his lips before rising. "For you, I will not break," he murmured, his voice cracking under the weight of love and fear. Inside the courtroom, every sound seemed magnified. The scrape of chairs, the shuffle of papers, the gavel striking. James stood, his knees weak, but his voice trembling with defiance. "I'm not perfect," he said, eyes wet but steady, "but I am her father, and I love her more than life itself." Sarah avoided his gaze, arms crossed tightly, her silence cutting sharper than words. The judge's expression remained unreadable, pen scratching across notes. James' heart pounded as he laid out his truth, each word born of desperation and devotion. His voice cracked, but did not falter. "Don't take her memories of me. Don't let her grow believing I abandoned her." The silence that followed stretched, suffocating, but James felt lighter. For once he had spoken his soul, unpolished, raw, and true. James' lawyer spoke next, polished words weaving arguments about fairness, about a child's right to know both parents. But James heard only fragments. His focus remained fixed on the image of Emily in his mind, her laughter, her hand gripping his. He clenched his fists beneath the table, whispering silently, "Don't forget me, baby." Sarah finally spoke, her voice sharp and accusing, listing his flaws like weapons. Each one struck him, tearing at the fragile shield he had built. He lowered his gaze, the shame heavy. But when she said, "He was never there," his head shot up. "I was there," he whispered fiercely under his breath, his lips trembling with rage and grief. The words echoed in his chest, louder than the courtroom silence, stronger than her accusations. His heart raced as if preparing for battle, not against Sarah, but against erasure itself. The tension reached its peak as James stood again, tears streaking down his face. His voice broke but carried through the courtroom. "I may not live with her. I may not tuck her in every night. But my love is not less because of absence." He looked at Sarah, not with anger, but with devastation. "You can't erase me from her heart." The courtroom grew still, every ear catching the raw pain in his voice. His knees wobbled, but he held himself upright, his hands gripping the table for strength. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. For the first time, Sarah's eyes flickered, her mask cracking ever so slightly. James exhaled, knowing he had laid himself bare, stripped of everything but the truth of his love for Emily. The gavel struck, the sound final and merciless. James sank into his seat, the weight of uncertainty pressing down. The judge's words blurred together. Delays, hearings, no resolution today. His heart sank, but within him burned something fierce. He whispered to himself, "I'll never stop fighting." Sarah gathered her papers, her steps sharp, her expression unreadable. James remained seated, clutching the photo of Emily, as if it were armor. The world around him faded, the murmurs of lawyers and clerks distant. All that remained was his vow, echoing louder than the ruling. He would fight every day, every hour, until Emily knew his love. His body trembled with exhaustion, but in his chest was a flame no system could extinguish. He rose slowly, unsteady but unbroken, walking out into the daylight carrying both his defeat and his defiance. James returned to his apartment, the silence greeting him like an old enemy. He dropped his suit jacket on the couch and collapsed beside it. The photo of Emily rested on the table, her smile glowing in the dim light. He whispered, "I didn't win today, but I haven't lost you." His eyes closed, tears slipping down his cheeks, but his chest rose steadier. The weight of the courtroom still clung to him, yet beneath it was a fragile sense of hope. He imagined her laughter again, not as memory but as a promise of tomorrow. The night outside hummed with life, and for the first time, James allowed himself to breathe fully. His battle was far from over, but his heart, battered and bruised, still beat for her. In the quiet, he whispered again, "For you, I'll keep standing." Days blurred, but James found strength in routine. He worked long hours, sent messages Sarah never answered, and wrote letters Emily might one day read. His nights were filled with ink-stained pages, words spilling like prayers. "One day you'll see these," he murmured as he folded another letter. The act of writing steadied him, giving shape to the love the courts tried to cage. Each letter was a lifeline, not just for her but for him, proof he hadn't disappeared. Though doubt gnawed, though the silence from Sarah remained cruel, James pressed on. The letters stacked higher, forming a fragile monument to his devotion. He whispered, "Even if I'm gone, my words will find you." His voice cracked, but the promise soothed his restless heart. One weekend, James stood outside the park where Emily once played. Children laughed, their voices a bittersweet chorus. He gripped the fence, staring at the swings swaying in the wind. He whispered, "I remember when you begged me to push you higher." The memory tightened his chest, but it also sparked warmth. For the first time in weeks he smiled faintly, fragile but real. He imagined her there, her hair flying back, her laughter unbroken. Though she wasn't present, her memory filled the park, turning absence into presence if only for a moment. He whispered, "I'll be here. Always." His voice carried into the breeze, and for once the silence didn't feel cruel. It felt like Emily might hear it wherever she was. The night before Emily's birthday, James lit a single candle on the kitchen table. He whispered, "Happy birthday, baby girl." His voice shook, but his eyes glowed softly in the candlelight. He imagined her face across the table, the light flickering in her eyes. He leaned forward, pressing his palms together, as though in prayer. "I'll never stop wishing for you." The flame wavered, and he closed his eyes, making a silent vow. No matter how many birthdays passed in distance, his love would remain constant, unshaken. Tears slid down his cheeks as he blew the candle out, the smoke curling like a fragile dream. The room returned to darkness, but his heart still burned with the steady fire of devotion. Morning light spilled through the blinds as James sat quietly on the couch, photo of Emily in his hands. He whispered, "Every day I fight, every breath I take is for you." His voice trembled, but his eyes were steady, filled with both sorrow and strength. He pressed the photo to his chest, closing his eyes as if she were there in his arms. For a moment, he breathed deeply, and the silence felt peaceful, not cruel. He whispered again, softer this time, "I would do it all again. For you I would." The words lingered in the air, wrapping the room in bittersweet finality. His love, imperfect but unbreakable, stood like a monument against time. The story did not end in victory or defeat, but in devotion that distance could never erase.